I'm a firm believer of achieving massive paradigm shifts from within. Sometimes that means getting into the middle of a system, riling up the masses over a cause to achieve, change, like policy change, like we saw it with like the story of Charlotte Figi in CBD, and it lit a fire under people and we saw really quick legislation with the 2018 Farm Bill. There's different ways to achieve massive change, and there's a lot of change that needs to happen. And so when I think of subversive value creation, that's what comes to mind. Like,
So just to remind folks about Charlotte, who's no longer with us, but she was a young girl, I believe, with pediatric epilepsy, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, some health condition, and her parents were CBD proponents, and this was the medicine that helped her. And she and her story changed an industry by subverting a dominant paradigm.
Right. It was really heartfelt storytelling, about cannabis, medical cannabis, emotionally driven story about how cannabis had impacted this family, and the story went mainstream. It's very upsetting how after legalization, those stories stop. The stories around medical cannabis stop.
They've totally changed, haven't they?
Medical cannabis falls by the wayside. People focus on other things and everything gets all screwed up. It's the same thing with industrial hemp. And I told our mayor here, he was on his way to the climate change summit in Dubai. And I told him, I'm like, hey, I know how to help with climate change. And he's like, how? Give me the basics. Climate change. We inspire like huge demand for hemp, which sequesters 4 times the amount of carbon as other crops, from what I understand. And if we can grow a ton of hemp, if we can make hemp plastic and hemp biofuel,
hempcretes, hemp-based foods, hemp fiber, hemp clothes.
We're tackling the Earth's biggest problems from so many different angles. But we have to disrupt like immensely valuable supply chains, lots of vested interests that continue to block progress this day. Like, hemp animal feed is totally blocked by specific associations. Hemp animal feed.
And hemp, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we could feed the world with hemp. All of the humans and our industrial animals as well could be fed with hemp.
Yeah. So what do? You got all these vested interests, supply chains. It'd be incredibly expensive and mind-boggling to change all that. You get the story out. The average person.
I know what to do. You go inside to that quiet place. Your story comes out. It goes out into the world and is reflected back on you. If it is an effective story, it will grow. Sometimes the problem with stories is not that they're not good, but that they're at the wrong time. And Charlotte's was at just the right time. Another story that was epically changing, that ushered in the Renaissance, had to do with the social and societal breakdown during the Great Plague of the Catholic Church, which had up until this point solved all of our problems for us, was impotent in the face of the Black Death. And it allowed other subversive stories to begin to come up. One of them was a love story of Tristan and Isolde. Do you know that love story?
I know of it.
Okay, so I believe that Isolde was, and this is repeated in the Arthurian stories as well, but I believe that Isolde was engaged to be married to King Mark, and boy, I don't think I'm getting it right. So I'm probably bleeding over into the the Arthurian story. But anyway, so I'll tell this story quickly. So the grandmother, which represents feminine wisdom, gives Isolde a love potion to drink on the night of her wedding to the king. And Tristan, who is trusted by the king, is sent to escort the king's future wife. And somehow they both drink the love potion together, and we all know what happens. And the next morning, they are deeply and immeasurably in blissful love. Their neurology has changed, their default mode networks have altered, and they are in love to the nth degree. And one of the guards comes down and says to the queen, or the future queen, who's no longer going to be queen anymore, "You have drunk your death by drinking this potion." And she said, "Oh no, I haven't. This is my life that I have drunk, and that I would rather go to hell with this man." Remember, the Catholic concept of hell was forever and ever, than be separated from him and go to heaven. So it altered the story of the grip of the hell story that the Catholic Church, and it brought about this evolution of romantic love, and the troubadours sang songs of love all through, and over decades or centuries, as opposed to today when things move much faster. The whole culture of Europe changed, and the Renaissance was brought in. There's another story in a similar vein that Mark Twain tells in the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And remember, Huck's on the Mississippi with a runaway slave that also grew up. So this slave Jim raised Huck from a boy. And, Jim's an old man, and Huck is, 12 or 13 or whatever. And he sees a wanted poster for his buddy, because Huck would go into town and Jim would stay with the raft because he was a runaway slave. And he was like, "Oh man, I'm going to have to turn my buddy in." So this is the story that cracked open a certain part of Americana with slavery. And Huck says, "I'm going to have to turn Jim in." And he's fretting about this. He's like, "I don't want to go to hell." He's like, "I don't want to be, put in jail for helping a runaway slave. I'm going to have to turn him in." And that night on the raft, as they're floating through the darkness with the stars out, he hears Jim weeping for his wife and kids. He's in order for him to get freedom, he had to leave his wife and kids. And Huck makes it up in his mind, and this is what Twain wrote, and this is why one of the reasons why the book got banned, is Huck decides that he'd rather go to hell than rat on his friend Jim. And it was a story at the right time that creates a crack in our collective view of what's going on right now. And I'm not saying that there are stories right now that are happening, but our collective story is about to crack, because we all feel it. At least I'm just saying that I feel it. I think a lot of us feel it. So what will that story be? We don't know yet, but it's going to come from somebody.